The rattling of a train whistle pierced the quiet Kansas afternoon of 1876 as Nora Nelson's heart pounded in her chest. She clutched her small valise tighter, her knuckles turning white as she ran through the tall stalks of corn, the rustling leaves betraying her position. 3 men pursued her, their heavy footfalls and angry shouts growing closer with each passing second. They wanted the papers she carried, documents that could destroy the corrupt railroad baron who had murdered her father. "She went this way," a gruff voice called out, much too close for comfort. Nora ducked deeper into the cornfield, the golden stalks scratching her face and catching on her simple blue calico dress. The sun beat down mercilessly, and sweat trickled down her neck. She'd been running for what felt like hours since jumping from the slow-moving train, her legs burning with exhaustion. At 22, she'd never imagined herself in such peril, fleeing for her life across the vast Kansas prairie. She stumbled on a root, falling hard to her knees. Pain shot through her leg, but she bit her lip to keep from crying out. The sound of men thrashing through the corn grew louder. Desperate, she crawled between the rows, seeking better cover. "I know you're in here, girl," one of the men shouted. "Hand over those papers and we might let you live." Tears stung her eyes as she pushed herself deeper into the field. Her father's last words echoed in her mind. "Get these to Judge Wilson in Topeka. Trust no one." Now, miles from Topeka and pursued by killers, those words seemed impossible to honor. The corn suddenly gave way to a small clearing and Nora froze. A man stood there, tall and imposing in the golden afternoon light. His wide-brimmed hat shadowed his face, but she could see the glint of his eyes watching her. A cowboy, by the look of his worn leather vest and the revolver holstered at his hip. Her heart sank. Another threat. Before she could retreat back into the corn, he moved toward her with surprising speed and gentleness, placing one finger to his lips in the universal sign for silence. Then, with a decisive motion, he pointed to a dense patch of corn several yards away where the stalks had been flattened. "In there," he whispered, his voice low and urgent. "Quick." Something in his eyes, a steadiness, a certainty, made her trust him despite her fear. She crawled into the depression he'd indicated, and he quickly arranged the fallen stalks to conceal her. Not a moment too soon. The crashing sounds of her pursuers grew louder. Through a small gap in her hiding place, Nora watched the cowboy casually lean against his horse, appearing for all the world as if he'd been resting there all afternoon. "You there," one of the men called out, emerging from the corn with a pistol drawn. 2 others flanked him, all 3 wearing the distinctive black suits of the railroad company's enforcers. "Seen a young woman come through here? Brown hair, blue dress." The cowboy pushed his hat back slightly, revealing a handsome, sun-weathered face. "Can't say that I have, gentlemen," he drawled, seemingly unconcerned by their weapons. "Been watering my horse here for the past half hour. Haven't seen anything but corn and sky. Search the area," the leader commanded his companions. "She can't have gone far." The men spread out, trampling corn as they searched. One came dangerously close to Nora's hiding spot, and she held her breath, pressing herself into the dirt. "Your business with this woman?" the cowboy asked casually, shifting his weight to subtly block the man from approaching her hiding place. "None of yours," the leader spat. "Railroad business?" "Ah," the cowboy nodded. "Must be important to have you boys out here in the heat of the day, running through cornfields." "Important enough to shoot meddlers," the man threatened, hand hovering near his gun. The cowboy smiled, but there was steel in his eyes. "Might want to reconsider that thought, friend. I'm just a curious rancher asking a civil question." Something in his stance made the leader hesitate. After a long, tense moment, he called to his men. She must have headed west toward the creek. "Let's move." The 3 men crashed back through the corn, their voices fading as they moved away. The cowboy waited, motionless, until the sounds completely disappeared. Then he turned toward Nora's hiding place. "They're gone now," he said softly, kneeling down and gently pulling aside the corn stalks. "You're safe with me." Nora emerged cautiously, dirt smudging her face and dress. "Why did you help me?" she asked, still clutching her valise. "Any decent man would," he replied, offering his hand to help her up. "I'm Beau Holbrook. I ranch about 5 miles north of here." "Nora Nelson," she replied, accepting his help but still wary. Thank you, Mr. Holbrook. Those railroad men don't usually chase innocent women through cornfields, he observed, his blue eyes studying her with curiosity rather than judgment. Must be quite a story. One I'm not sure I should share, she said, glancing in the direction her pursuers had gone. They could return. They will, Beau agreed. Which is why you should come with me. My ranch is safe and those men won't think to look there. Nora hesitated, remembering her father's warning to trust no one, but this man had already saved her once and she had few options. The nearest town was miles away and night would fall soon. How do I know I can trust you? She asked. A smile touched the corner of his mouth. You don't, but I promise you'll be safer with me than alone in this field when those men circle back. Nora weighed her options quickly. Very well, Mr. Holbrook, call me Beau, he said, leading her to his horse, a magnificent chestnut stallion. And we'd best hurry. Can you ride? Since I was 6, she answered, allowing him to help her onto the horse. Beau mounted behind her, and Nora felt an unexpected flutter in her chest at his proximity. His arms reached around her to take the reins, creating a circle that felt strangely protective rather than threatening. Hold tight, he instructed, and then they were off, galloping through the cornfield and out onto the open prairie beyond. As they rode, the vast Kansas landscape opened before them, rolling hills covered in late summer wildflowers and tall grasses that swayed in the breeze. The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, a beautiful contrast to the danger Nora had just escaped. My father was murdered 3 days ago, she found herself saying, the words spilling out before she could stop them. He was a bookkeeper for the Missouri Pacific Railroad. He discovered that Victor Harrington, the regional director, was embezzling funds and falsifying records to steal land from farmers. Beau's arms tightened slightly around her. Harrington has a reputation, not a good one. My father gathered evidence, Nora continued. The night he was killed, he gave me these papers and told me to take them to Judge Wilson in Topeka. Harrington's men have been after me ever since. Judge Wilson is a fair man, Beau said. If he sees that evidence, he'll act on it. You know him? Nora asked, surprised. This is cattle country. Everyone knows everyone, especially those worth knowing. He paused. We'll get you to Topeka, Miss Nelson, but first we need to make sure you're safe. As they crested a hill, Beau's ranch came into view, a modest but well-maintained operation with a sturdy 2-story house, a large barn, and several outbuildings. Cattle grazed in the distance, and smoke curled from the chimney of the main house. Home, Beau said simply. They rode into the yard where an older man emerged from the barn. Thought you'd be back sooner, Beau, he called, then noticed Nora. Didn't realize you'd be bringing company. Unexpected circumstances, Pete, Beau replied, dismounting and reaching up to help Nora down. This is Miss Nelson. She'll be staying with us for a bit. Pete, a weathered man with kind eyes, nodded politely to Nora. Welcome, miss. Any friend of Beau's is welcome here. Pete's my foreman, Beau explained. Been with me since I started this place 5 years ago. Pleasure to meet you, Nora said, feeling oddly comfortable despite her circumstances. Pete, we might have trouble coming, Beau continued. Railroad men, if anyone comes asking questions, never seen the lady, Pete finished. Understood. Beau led Nora to the house, a surprisingly comfortable home with solid furniture and clean, bright rooms. It's not fancy, he said, almost apologetically, but it's safe. It's lovely, Nora replied honestly. After days of running, the simple comfort of the house felt like luxury. A middle-aged woman appeared from what must have been the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron. Beau Holbrook, you might have sent word you were bringing a guest, she scolded, though her eyes were kind. Martha, this is Miss Nora Nelson. She needs our help and hospitality, Beau said. Miss Nelson, Martha keeps this house running and feeds us too well. You look exhausted, dear, Martha said, immediately taking Nora under her wing. Let's get you cleaned up and fed. I've got stew on the stove and fresh bread just out of the oven. The simple kindness nearly undid Nora. After days of fear and flight, being treated with such ordinary humanity brought tears to her eyes. Thank you, she managed. Martha showed her to a small but clean bedroom and brought water for washing. There's a dress in the wardrobe that might fit you, she said. It belonged to Beau's sister when she visited last summer. Left alone, Nora quickly washed the dirt from her face and arms, changed into the offered dress, a simple green cotton that was slightly large but clean, and made sure her father's papers were still secure in her valise. Then she joined the others in the dining room. Beau stood when she entered, his eyes widening slightly. "You look refreshed," he said, pulling out a chair for her. The meal was simple but delicious: beef stew, fresh bread, and apple pie for dessert. For the first time in days, Nora allowed herself to relax slightly, listening as Beau and Pete discussed ranch business. It felt surreally normal. After dinner, Beau invited her to sit on the porch. The evening was mild, with stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky and crickets singing in the tall grass. "We'll head to Topeka in a few days," Beau said. "Those men will be watching the roads and trains. Better to wait until they think you've moved on." "I can't impose on you like this," Nora protested. "It's no imposition," he assured her. "Besides, I have business in Topeka myself." "Why are you helping me?" she asked, the question that had been on her mind since the cornfield. Beau was quiet for a moment, looking out at the darkening prairie. "My father was forced off his land by the railroad when I was 16, he said finally. "He fought it legally, but the railroad had judges in their pocket. He died a broken man. If your evidence can stop men like Harrington, I want to help." "I'm sorry about your father," Nora said softly. "It was 10 years ago," Beau replied. "I've built something here since then." He smiled slightly. "Something they can't take away." Nora studied him in the fading light, his strong profile, the determined set of his jaw. There was something reassuring about his quiet confidence. "Thank you," she said simply. "For everything." Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Then Martha called from inside about fresh coffee, breaking the moment. The next morning, Nora woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee and bacon. For a disorienting moment, she forgot where she was. Then the events of the previous day came rushing back. She dressed quickly in the borrowed green dress and made her way to the kitchen. Martha was frying eggs at the stove while Beau sat at the table with a cup of coffee, studying a ledger. He looked up when Nora entered, a smile warming his face. "Good morning," he said. "Sleep well." "Better than I have in days," she admitted. Breakfast was a cheerful affair, with Martha fussing over Nora and insisting she eat second helpings of everything. Afterward, Beau suggested showing her around the ranch. "I'd like that," Nora said, surprised at how eager she was to spend more time with him. Outside, the morning was glorious, clear blue sky, a light breeze carrying the scent of grass and wildflowers. Beau showed her the barn, the corrals, and introduced her to his prize stallion, Thunder. "He's beautiful," Nora said, stroking the horse's velvety nose. "Would you like to ride?" Beau asked. "There's a creek about a mile from here. Pretty spot." They saddled 2 horses, and Nora followed Beau across the rolling prairie. Away from the ranch, with the wind in her hair and the rhythmic movement of the horse beneath her, she felt a freedom she hadn't experienced in a long time. The creek was indeed beautiful, clear water bubbling over rocks, shaded by cottonwood trees. They dismounted, letting the horses drink while they sat on a fallen log. "How did you end up ranching here?" Nora asked. "After my father died, I worked as a cowhand on various ranches, saving every penny. 5 years ago, I had enough to buy this land. It was nothing then, just grass and sky." His eyes surveyed the landscape with pride. "Now it's home." "You've built something wonderful," Nora said sincerely. "What about you?" Beau asked. "What was your life like before all this happened?" Nora looked down at her hands. "Ordinary. My mother died when I was 12. It was just my father and me after that. He worked for the railroad and I kept house and sometimes helped with his bookkeeping." She smiled sadly. "He was teaching me the business, said I had a head for numbers." "Not many fathers would do that for a daughter." "He sounds like a good man," Beau said quietly. "He was. He believed in honesty and fairness," her voice caught. "That's what got him killed." Without thinking, Beau reached out and covered her hand with his. The touch was comforting, and Nora didn't pull away. "We'll make sure his death wasn't in vain," he promised. They sat in companionable silence for a while, listening to the water and the rustling leaves. Eventually, Beau stood and offered his hand. "We should head back. Martha will be wondering where we've gone." As they rode back to the ranch, Nora found herself studying Beau's profile against the sky. In just one day, this man had gone from stranger to protector to something else she couldn't quite define. Something that made her heart beat a little faster when he smiled at her. The peaceful day was shattered when they crested the final hill and saw riders approaching the ranch from the opposite direction, 3 men in black suits. "Harrington's men," Nora whispered, fear clutching at her throat. Beau's expression hardened. "Stay here," he instructed, handing her the reins of his horse. "If anything happens, ride for the Jensen place 2 miles east. Pete will know I sent you." Before she could protest, he was striding down the hill toward the ranch, his hand resting casually near his holstered gun. Nora watched anxiously from her hidden position as he intercepted the men in the yard. Even from a distance, she could see the tension in Beau's stance as he spoke with the men. They dismounted and one gestured emphatically, clearly demanding something. Beau shook his head. The leader stepped closer, his posture threatening. Pete emerged from the barn, a rifle in his hands, and positioned himself strategically. The standoff lasted several minutes. Finally, the men remounted their horses, clearly unhappy. As they rode away, Beau watched them go, his hand still near his gun until they disappeared from sight. Nora waited until they were completely gone before riding down to join Beau in the yard. "What happened?" she asked anxiously. "They're searching all the ranches and farms in the area," Beau said, his face grim. "Said they're looking for a thief who stole railroad property." "Did they believe you?" "Not entirely, but they had no cause to search the place, especially with Pete making it clear they weren't welcome." He took the reins of his horse from her. "They'll be back, though, with more men." That evening, tension hung over the ranch. Pete stationed 2 ranch hands as lookouts, and Beau cleaned his revolver at the kitchen table, his face serious. "We'll leave for Topeka tomorrow," he decided. "It's not safe here anymore." "I never meant to bring danger to your home," Nora said, distressed. "The danger was coming whether you brought it or not," Beau replied. "Men like Harrington don't stop until they get what they want." "Then I should go alone. I've already put you at risk." Beau looked up from his gun, his eyes meeting hers. "You're not going alone," he said firmly. "Those papers are important, but so is your life. I'm seeing this through." The intensity in his gaze made Nora's breath catch. No one had ever looked at her that way before, as if she mattered beyond measure. Martha broke the moment by announcing that supper was ready. The meal was quieter than the previous evening, with Pete joining them and discussing the best route to Topeka. "The main roads will be watched," he warned. "You'll need to take the old cattle trails. It'll add a day to the journey," Beau nodded, "but it's safer." They planned to leave before dawn. After dinner, Nora retired to her room to prepare, carefully repacking her valise with the precious documents. A soft knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called. Beau entered, carrying a small bundle. "Martha thought you might need these for the journey," he said, handing her a package containing a riding skirt and blouse, more practical than a dress. "Thank you," Nora said, accepting the clothes. "And thank Martha for me." Beau hesitated, seeming uncharacteristically uncertain. "Nora," he began, "I want you to know that whatever happens tomorrow, He paused, searching for words. "Yes," she prompted, her heart suddenly racing. "I'm glad I found you in that cornfield," he finished simply. The words were ordinary, but the way he said them with such quiet intensity made them feel like so much more. "So am I," she replied softly. He nodded, as if something important had been settled between them, and left her to her preparations. The next morning arrived with a soft gray light seeping through the window. Nora dressed quickly in the riding clothes Martha had provided, which fit surprisingly well. She secured her father's papers in an inside pocket of the jacket and made her way downstairs. Beau was already in the kitchen, speaking quietly with Pete. Both men looked up when she entered, and something in Beau's expression, a mix of approval and something warmer, made her cheeks flush. "Ready?" he asked. "As I'll ever be," she replied. Martha provided them with provisions for the journey: bread, cheese, dried beef, and apples packed efficiently in saddlebags. Outside, 2 horses were saddled and waiting. The eastern sky was just beginning to lighten as they mounted up. "Remember," Pete cautioned, "stay off the main trails until you're past Cottonwood Falls. Then take the river road into Topeka. Beau nodded, adjusting his hat. We should reach the Jensen place by nightfall. We can rest there. Godspeed, Pete said, stepping back. As they rode away from the ranch, Nora cast one last look at the place that had briefly become a sanctuary. Ahead lay uncertainty and danger, but beside her rode a man who had already risked much to help her. The thought gave her courage. They rode in comfortable silence as dawn broke over the prairie, painting the landscape in soft gold light. The tall grasses rippled like water in the morning breeze, and meadowlarks called from hidden perches. Despite the circumstances, Nora found herself enjoying the journey and the company. "How far is it to Topeka?" she asked as they paused to rest the horses mid-morning. 3 days if all goes well, Beau replied, offering her a canteen of water. 2 if we push hard, but that's risky. Do you think the railroad men will follow us? They'll try, he said grimly. But they don't know these trails like I do. We have that advantage. They continued their journey, staying to less traveled paths and keeping to the shelter of trees when possible. Beau proved to be a knowledgeable guide, pointing out landmarks and sharing stories of the land they passed through. My grandfather came to Kansas in '54, he told her as they rode through a particularly beautiful stretch of rolling hills. Said he fell in love with the sky here, bigger than anything he'd ever seen in Pennsylvania. It is magnificent, Nora agreed, looking up at the vast blue expanse. I've never been outside of Kansas, but I've always wondered what the ocean looks like. I saw it once in California, Beau said. Drove cattle to San Francisco as a young man. The ocean, he paused, seemed to search for words. It's like the prairie but alive, moving, breathing. The way he described it with such quiet wonder made Nora see him differently. Here was a man who noticed beauty, who felt things deeply beneath his capable exterior. By late afternoon, dark clouds had gathered on the horizon and thunder rumbled in the distance. Storm coming, Beau observed, studying the sky with concern. We need to find shelter. The Jensen place is still hours away. Is there somewhere closer? Nora asked, eyeing the threatening clouds. Beau considered for a moment. There's an old line shack about a mile from here. Used by cowboys during cattle drives. It's not much, but it'll keep us dry. They pushed their horses faster, racing the approaching storm. The wind picked up, bending the prairie grasses and whipping Nora's hair around her face. They reached the line shack. Just as the first heavy raindrops began to fall, a small, crude cabin nestled against a stand of cottonwoods. Beau quickly unsaddled the horses and secured them under a lean-to attached to the cabin while Nora carried their provisions inside. The interior was sparse but clean: a small iron stove, a rough-hewn table with 2 chairs and a narrow cot against one wall. Home for the night, Beau said, entering with the saddles and closing the door against the now pouring rain. Not what I planned, but it'll do. Nora set about making the space more comfortable while Beau got a fire going in the stove. Outside, the storm intensified, rain lashing against the small windows and thunder cracking overhead. Quite a storm, Nora commented, unpacking some of their food. Good for us, Beau replied, feeding another stick into the stove. Washes away tracks, makes it harder for anyone to follow. They shared a simple meal of bread, cheese, and dried beef, sitting at the small table as the storm raged outside. The cabin grew cozy with the heat from the stove, and Nora found herself relaxing despite their circumstances. Tell me more about your ranch, she said, genuinely interested. You've built it from nothing. That's impressive. Beau's face softened as he spoke about his home, the challenges he'd faced, the satisfaction of watching it grow, his plans for the future. His passion for the land and the life he'd created was evident in every word. And you, he asked eventually, what do you want for your future, Nora Nelson? The question caught her off guard. With her father's death and her current predicament, the future had seemed like a luxury she couldn't afford to contemplate. I don't know anymore, she admitted. Before all this, I thought perhaps I'd become a bookkeeper like my father. I'm good with numbers. She looked down at her hands. Now, I just want justice for him. After that, she shrugged, unable to see beyond the immediate danger. You'll have a future, Beau said with quiet certainty, and choices about what it holds. Their eyes met across the small table, and something shifted in the air between them. Nora became acutely aware of how alone they were, how intimate the small cabin felt with rain drumming on the roof and the soft glow of the stove illuminating Beau's face. He reached across the table and took her hand, his touch warm and steady. "When I found you in that cornfield," he said softly, "I had no idea how much my life was about to change." Nora's heart pounded. "How has it changed?" she asked, barely above a whisper. "I've spent 5 years building a ranch, making it successful. I thought that was enough." His thumb traced gentle circles on her palm. "Now I'm not so sure." The honesty in his eyes took her breath away. "What more do you want?" she asked. Instead of answering with words, Beau stood, still holding her hand, and drew her gently to her feet. For a moment they stood facing each other in the soft light, the storm forgotten. Then, with infinite tenderness, he leaned down and kissed her. His lips were warm and gentle, the kiss a question rather than a demand. Nora answered by sliding her arms around his neck, rising on tiptoe to deepen the connection. When they finally parted, Beau rested his forehead against hers. "I want this," he said simply. "You." The declaration, so straightforward and honest, touched something deep in Nora's heart. In the midst of danger and uncertainty, this man had become her sanctuary. "I'm afraid," she confessed. "Not of you, but of everything else. What if we don't make it to Topeka? What if Harrington's men find us?" "They won't," Beau promised, his arms tightening around her. "And even if life stays complicated, we'll face it together, if you want that." Did she want that? Nora searched her heart and found the answer had been forming since the moment he found her in the cornfield. "I do," she whispered. He kissed her again, and this time there was nothing hesitant about it. It was a promise, a declaration, a beginning. The storm eventually passed, leaving a clean, fresh scent in the air. They spent the night in the small cabin, Beau insisting on sleeping on the floor while Nora took the cot. Despite the uncomfortable arrangements, there was a new peace between them, an understanding that transcended their current circumstances. They set out at first light, the world washed clean by the rain. The day was clear and bright, perfect for traveling. They made good time, reaching the Jensen farm by midday, a friendly homestead where they were welcomed warmly, fed generously, and given fresh horses for the remainder of their journey. The next day and a half passed without incident. They traveled steadily, staying alert for any sign of pursuit but encountering none. They talked as they rode about their childhoods, their hopes, the life they might build together once the danger had passed. With each mile, their connection deepened, transcending the extraordinary circumstances of their meeting. By the afternoon of the third day, the outskirts of Topeka came into view, a growing town with brick buildings, busy streets, and the promise of justice. They approached cautiously, aware that danger might still lurk. "Judge Wilson's office is on Kansas Avenue," Beau said as they entered the town. "We should go directly there." The streets were busy with afternoon traffic wagons, carriages, people going about their business. Nora felt exposed after days on the open prairie, her nerves taut with anticipation and fear. They tied their horses outside a solid brick building with Shawnee County Courthouse engraved above the door. Inside, they asked for Judge Wilson and were directed to a second-floor office. The judge, a stern-looking man with steel-gray hair and intelligent eyes, listened gravely as Nora explained her story and presented her father's evidence. He examined the documents carefully, his expression growing increasingly troubled. "These are serious accusations against a powerful man," he said finally, looking up at them. "But the evidence is compelling. Your father did thorough work, Miss Nelson." "Will it be enough?" Nora asked anxiously. "More than enough for me to issue warrants for Harrington's arrest and open a full investigation." The judge's eyes were kind but determined. "Your father's sacrifice won't be in vain." Relief washed over Nora, so powerful she felt her knees weaken. Beau's steady hand at her elbow kept her upright. "What happens now?" Beau asked. "I'll dispatch federal marshals to arrest Harrington immediately," Judge Wilson replied. "Miss Nelson, you'll need to stay in Topeka for a time to give formal testimony. We can arrange safe lodging for you." "She'll be staying with me," Beau said firmly. "At the Morrison Hotel. I'll ensure her safety until this is resolved." The judge nodded, seeming to understand the relationship that had formed between them. "Very well. I'll send word when we need your testimony, Miss Nelson, and thank you both of you for your courage." Outside the courthouse, the late afternoon sun gilded the streets of Topeka. Nora felt lighter than she had in weeks, the burden of her father's papers finally lifted from her shoulders. "It's over," she said wonderingly, "or at least beginning to be over." Beau took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "One chapter ends, another begins," he said softly. They checked into the Morrison Hotel's separate rooms as propriety demanded and had dinner in the hotel restaurant, celebrating quietly. Afterward, they walked through the streets of Topeka in the gathering dusk, enjoying the simple pleasure of being together without immediate danger. "What happens after the trial?" Nora asked as they strolled along Kansas Avenue, "when all this is truly over?" Beau stopped walking and turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "That depends on you," he said seriously. "I know what I want." "And what's that?" she asked, though her heart already knew the answer. "I want you to come back to the ranch with me, not as a guest this time, but to stay." His eyes searched hers. "I know it's fast, we've only known each other a few days, but sometimes life gives you certainty in unexpected ways." Nora thought about the ranch, the golden fields, the comfortable house, Martha's cooking, Pete's quiet loyalty. Most of all, she thought about Beau, his strength, his kindness, the way he looked at her as if she were precious. "I'd like that," she said softly. "Very much." His smile lit up his entire face. "I was hoping you'd say that," he murmured, leaning down to kiss her gently. 4 days later, Harrington was arrested and jailed pending trial. His men, including those who had chased Nora through the cornfield, were also taken into custody. Judge Wilson assured them that justice would be served, though the legal proceedings might take months. With the immediate danger past, Beau and Nora began their journey back to the ranch. They traveled leisurely, no longer needing to hide on back trails. Along the way, they stopped in a small town where the local church had a kindly preacher who was happy to marry them with minimal fuss, a simple ceremony with only the preacher's wife and a passing traveler as witnesses. When they finally returned to the ranch, Martha cried happy tears and Pete shook Beau's hand so vigorously it nearly came off. The ranch hands organized an impromptu celebration with fiddle music and dancing under the stars. As summer turned to fall and fall to winter, Nora found her place on the ranch, keeping the books, helping with the household, learning the business from Beau. They expanded the operation, adding more cattle and hiring additional hands. In the spring, they began building a larger house on a rise overlooking the prairie. Word eventually reached them that Harrington had been convicted and sentenced to prison. The railroad was under new management, with stricter oversight and fairer practices. Nora's father's legacy lived on in the changes his evidence had brought about. One evening, a year after their first meeting, Beau and Nora sat on the porch of their new home, watching the sunset paint the prairie in gold and crimson. Nora rested her head on her husband's shoulder, her hand absently touching the gentle swell of her belly where their first child grew. "I was thinking," Beau said, his arm around her waist, "if it's a boy, we might name him after your father." Tears pricked Nora's eyes at the thoughtfulness of the gesture. "He would have liked that," she said softly, "and he would have liked you too." "I wish I could have met him," Beau replied, "to thank him for raising such an extraordinary daughter." Nora smiled, remembering the frightened young woman who had hidden in a cornfield a year ago. How far she had come since then from running for her life to finding it, rich and full and promising. "Do you ever think about that day," she asked, "when you found me in the corn?" "Every day," Beau answered honestly. "Best thing that ever happened to me, finding you there." As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Nora thought about the strange twists of fate that had brought her to this moment, danger and loss that had ultimately led to love and new life. The journey had been unpredictable and often frightening, but the destination was more beautiful than she could have imagined. "You're safe with me," Beau had promised that first day. A year later, in his arms, watching the stars emerge over their home, Nora knew it was a promise that would hold for a lifetime.